So, hello everyone, hello and welcome to this morning's lecture. I hope you're all looking good and feeling fine. I'm coming to you from my studio at home. So I'm going to be doing the whole lecture on this platform this morning. Just to let you know, it is going to be it's going to be about social media and personalized learning, and this idea of de-schooling education. So this idea of sort of like getting rid of schools altogether. Let's get rid of that icon whirling around there. Excuse me. I definitely need a hard limiter on here, but I'll work on that. So we're going to be looking at both of these today, and what I'll do, hang on, back PowerPoint. It has this habit of suddenly just sort of like going to its next slide like automatically, and so I need to be really strict with it. Yeah. So okay then, so let's start off. We're going to be talking about this idea of de-schooling, but the first thing I want to talk about is learning via social media. Okay, and this sort of like links into the other learning theories that we've actually been talking about up to this point, and you can, if you wish, complete a critical analysis on this in the forums. Remember, you only need five of the forum posts, 200 words to go into your assignment that is due in December. So it might be that you've already got your 200 words done and dusted, which is fantastic. Remember, you can make slight adjustments to them. You know, if you notice that there's a spelling mistake, or you notice that there's a referencing error just from proofreading, then by all means go back and check it. And remember, you can also use these as examples to show the effectiveness of collaborative learning in the assignment. And if you want to do that, then just cut and paste bits into an appendices, or if you wish, just refer to them lower down or above your main 1,500 words. So we talked about a lot of different learning theories, both the old ones such as Vygotsky and Piaget. So we talked about constructivism and cognitive learning, and we've come right the way through, and recently we've been talking about connectivism and also connected learning. And today what I want to talk about is learning through social media, and it's often called informal learning. Now, just to let you know, Steve Wheeler, his book of course is Learning with Ease 2015 here, he actually states that in his book, we can boldly claim that anyone can learn just about anything they wish because of social media channels provide the content. And this to me is really, really interesting, because basically what he's stating here, I need to stop doing that PowerPoint. Basically what he's stating here is that whenever whenever you want to learn something, you can actually go onto social media, onto YouTube, onto Twitter, and generally find a way of learning it. Now, this does of course relate to the fact that you would need an internet connection. So you might be thinking at the moment, well, this is almost like some kind of elitism, because if you don't have the connections, if you don't have that Wi-Fi, if you don't have the computers, then you are almost like removed from this form of learning. But what we actually talk about, I'm just trying to change the automatically keep going. I've got it down as automatically pause after a transition. So I'm not too sure why it's just sort of like keep on going by itself. But never mind. These things are sent to try us. So I'll try to stop it quickly as it comes across. So what I would like to look at today is this idea of the positives and negatives of this approach, which of course are really important. This almost like to need to know where to find it, and if you really want to find something, you need to want to find it to actually go and find it. Also, this idea of commitment to learn, i.e. nobody's forcing you to go off and learn on social media. And so it's really sort of like down to you to do it. And also this idea of practice, what is it like in practice and the actual application for it. Okay then, so basically it's actually been linked to more established theories. So we've already talked about connected learning and connectivism. So linking back to Vygotsky, more knowledgeable other, and technology is seen in this sense of social media or informal learning as the expert. But it has to be remembered that the expert is not YouTube itself. It's not Google itself. It's actually the people behind that technology. So it's a bit like if you were watching this video and I didn't keep appearing on it, sort of like taking it all on board. You have to remember that the actual more knowledgeable other in this case is not YouTube. It's actually the people or the person who's presenting the video. So it's a bit like this idea of why does it keep doing this? Is going to annoy me now. This is like a normal lecture. This is why I've got my badge on today. So you know that I have credence. You know that I am an expert. You know that I am somebody who hopefully knows what they're talking about and broadcasting this live to you. And I think this is a really important function. And we have to remember that it's not just YouTube itself. It is the people behind it. Now, in a same way, is it going to move on? No. The same way, if we look at Piaget's constructing new knowledge, this is very apparent out on the internet. And so people are there creating their own knowledge, and then people are using what they see to construct new knowledge by themselves. Whether or not this is shared or not, of course, is a completely different matter. The videos that we watch can scaffold learning, they can instruct, they can provide support, and you might even go as far as to say as the comments in the underneath the video might actually be seen as people feeding back or providing more knowledge or some kind of interaction. And all this idea of asynchronous learning coming in there, that you don't have to be there right at that moment. You can sort of like come back at a different time, etc., etc. Now, the other thing that I have to sort of like emphasize is this idea that it's this idea that, you know, this is a seeing the learner probably more as a solo explorer. They are going out and seeking where to learn, what to learn, how to do it, rather than actually coming to an established institution and working hard on it and together or even separately. This is when I hope that I fix the yes! Problem fix. It's not going on by itself. Yeah, so it really sort of like takes this idea of learning to almost like a more personalized level, and this could be something that is never actually engaged with in schools at all. This idea that learners are coming to schools or higher education institutions, and apart from when they're doing doctoral work, or in some cases master's work, it's this idea that it's down to the learner. They are deciding what to do, how to do it, when's the best time for them to learn, when is it the best time for them to understand and practice. So it really, social media, or informal learning as we sometimes call it, is down to the solo explorer, the learner as a solo explorer. And this is really interesting, but also very powerful. So if we just flick across and look at, make sure it's bigger. So Paulo Freire, who died in 1997, probably before any of you were actually born, wrote a book called The Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Now remember, pedagogy is just the same idea of teaching and learning. And he talked about blogging, and blogging is something that is really, I'm really passionate about blogging. And although I haven't yet sort of like engaged so much with my academic voice on blogging, I use it very much as a reflective piece of a reflective activity. And you know, you might be thinking, oh well, this is interesting, but what has blogging got to do with this, the whole idea of formal or informal learning? And for I apologize for my accent there. Hopefully it was roughly right. He looked at blogging in this idea of in his book, The Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And just to let you know, if you want to go back and see this, I've taken it all from Steve Wheeler's book, Learning with Ease. So it's in there. And he sort of like picked up 6 points for blogging, and how this can actually promote not only learning but social interactions as well. So one of the things that he mentioned is that this idea of responding to the reader's comments with humility. And it talks about the dialogue is the most important part of blogging. And this is something which I might suggest is a bit of a negative comment. I know a lot of people, a lot of bloggers actually turn comments off. And you might have even seen YouTube channels when the comments have been removed. And this, I think, is twofold. The first thing is, I think it's this issue about trolls, people going along, just randomly putting blogs posts up and saying random things, which is not always helpful. But also this idea that some people might just be there for the argument instead of actually engaging with the reader or the blogger. And this is when Freire talks about humility, and this idea that understanding that somebody's behind the blog post. It's not a computer, it's a person. Which takes us on to this fact of don't be afraid to speak out on your blogs about issues which concern you. And he goes on to say, speak for those who cannot speak for themselves. And this is something that I feel really passionate about, especially when I'm blogging or live streaming or even YouTubing. This idea that I feel that I'm speaking out about things that really interest me, and I want to sort of like put out there in the public forum. And this might not be learning material. It might be talking about mental health. It might be talking about government manifestos. It could be to do with anything. But I feel that that's a very powerful thing to be able to do. And this then sort of like supports learning, not only the people who are watching the video, but also my own learning. It says use blogs to circumvent regulated thinking. Think and learn for themselves. And this, I think, is a very interesting concept. And this is sort of like to think, okay then, in a world with institutionalized learning, as I like to call it, sometimes things are set out and you have to learn in a certain way, or you want to investigate in a certain way, or you are told to learn something. And I think this is one of the powers of the blogging, in the sense that there's nothing actually laid out in stone about what to do. And your blog and when I say blogging, I should really put a caveat in here. Is that I'm not just talking about WordPress blog. Twitter I see as micro blogging. YouTube could be blogging when you're just randomly talking about something. So I'm not just talking about WordPress, hi, today my name is, sort of like idea. It's this whole idea of getting information out there. And this blogging actually allows us to sort of like talk to other people, and also to gain an insight into other people's thoughts. And to continue on his 6 points, read other people's blog and make comments, alternative perspectives and thinking. Now there's a huge degree of discussion out there about blogging, and a lot of academics might not see it as beneficial. They almost like want to be custodians of knowledge, and they think that blogging is irrelevant, or just people sounding off, or people who don't have expertise. And I think this is a really interesting situation. I often want to know who wrote the blog rather than what the name of the blog is. And the other thing that I really am interested in is that this concept that even though the person might not be a professor or anything like that, they do have a valuable contribution to learning. And you don't have to be an academic or professor or, you know, somebody high up in the field. Sometimes other people can see connections really well and see links and discussions. And I think this is one of the powers of blogging, in the sense that you can go and read other people's blogs, engage with them and see these different perspectives. I once, and you might find this a bit strange, but I once let's go to full screen just to see me in all my glory. I once went to a talk about digital learning that was all based on theology, and almost like the religious viewpoint of how we interact with people on the internet. And I found this really, really interesting, because what it was talking about was, why do people say nasty things to people in comments? Why do they actually engage with them? And you might find it very strange that I was engaging with a theologist about it and going to their lectures, but I don't know what that was. It might be an email coming in, sorry. But it was really interesting to see different people's perspectives and different people's thinking about it. And that, I think, is really important. This idea of not becoming almost like isolated in your own sort of like silo, your own academic bubble, and actually going out and seeing how learning crosses around to other places. Okay, wipe. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. So 2 other points that he came up with was, use blogging to support thinking. Abstract thoughts stay abstract until they are formed into concrete. Now, this is something that I find really, really helpful for when I'm blogging. And I must admit, probably nobody ever reads my blogs at all, but I do find that when I'm having to write it, when I'm actually having to go in and actually write something, it really allows me to make my abstract thoughts more concrete. And sometimes I actually write a blog post and never publish it, because it's just that thought, that ability to sort of like make abstract more concrete. And then finally, number 6. use blogging as a reflection. And I use this a lot, and I know a lot of bloggers do. And reflection is active participation in learning. Okay, so those are the 6 points. Those are the 6 points. And I really want you to think. And in a minute, I'm going to make a little beeping noise, which means that if you're watching the recording of this, then you need to stop and pause. Now, if you're watching this live, then by all means, as I waffle on, post some comments in the chat, things what you're thinking about or anything that you would like me to answer as we go along. Now, the important thing, what I would like you to talk about or think about is blogging a powerful tool for learning? Is it all about learning? And what are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? What do you consider to be the positives of blogging? Things that we should be careful about, things that we should be on the lookout. So if you're watching the recording, then please stop this video now and come back once you've thought about it. Beep. And I'm going to do a quick turn that off, and let's move on with this. Here we go. So this is there was Freenet, Freenet, talked about social media. He was a French educator who died in 1966, which is really an important year. Sorry, I'm making a whole load of actions here, and I'm not actually online. Here we go. Oh, I'm just watching the preview back, and I suddenly realised what fade to black means. Yeah, I can see it now. Everybody will be panicking. Help, help! But I see what fade to black does now. Got it. Yeah. So anyway, you'll catch up in a minute. So Freenet died in 1966, which is an interesting year because that was the year I was born. Yes, you can start doing the mathematics now and figure out how old I am. But he actually started to realise that computers might be more than just calculating machines. Okay, he actually started to realise that they're not more just about calculation. They could be a lot more than that. He also started to talk about that holistic approaches to education and the current school system at the time was broken. He actually thought that things were not, this holistic approach in education was not the best way to do. And he spoke about this idea of making it more personalized, and to improve education and the school system, he gave 5 points, and these 5 points can now be placed in the context of social media. So let's have a look at them. So pedagogy of work, and what he was saying here is that we actually learn through making products and providing services. And this was really important because if you think about today's way we learn, it's really important that we actually create something. And this, if you're sort of like thinking back and thinking, hang on, Ian's spoken about this beforehand. Yes, I have. And, you know, even back in 1966, they were talking about this idea of it's important to learn for work, or in our context, we'll probably say more now, important to learn for skills. Okay, and you have to have this output. You have to make something, and you have to sort of like generate something at the end of it. And this links to enterprise projects and the use of social media, and it sort of like ensures that everything is moving in the right direction. Now, In the same way, he talked about inquiry-based learning method, and this idea of learning by asking questions, which needs a safe environment. And this idea that we should be encouraging learners and ourselves to ask questions and actually talk about things in a safe environment when we feel that it's not judgmental, nobody's going to ask us, embarrass us or anything like that. And it also links to game-based learning, which I'm going to be talking about next week in the lecture. And this idea of solving problems and challenges and working as a team. And in game-based learning, that's what you do. You sort of, to take for an example, if we take, for example, Minecraft, in school, it's used a lot in the sense of, right, everybody come together, build this. And it's a lot of different players or avatars or children working together, trying to build a house, trying to build a 3D shape, trying to understand redstone, which is sort of like a logical algorithm set in Minecraft world. And so he was actually saying that not only must we work towards something, but we have to have this ability to solve problems, work as a team, encounter challenges in a safe environment. And this leads on to his third problem, which was all about the cooperative learning method. And what he was talking about is this idea that it's not just games that this applies to. And some of the things that I've been saying about blogging also links to this. And if you've got the PowerPoint up in front of you, one of the things that you'll be able to do is go and have a look at quad blogging. I put the link on it. And this involves getting together 3 or 4 schools that actually blog together and interact with each other. And so it's sort of like taking this informal learning out to a more, maybe a more formal state, and writing for an audience and writing for people. Excuse me. And then 2 final points, this idea of the natural method. And they talked about this idea. Sorry, I've got something popping up in my ear. I think it's my emails popping in. Yes, it is. I'm just going to cancel that. I'm going to turn that off and turn that off. There you go. I won't get it now. So it was talking about this idea that you learn best when you're naturally interested in the topic. Now, you would have thought at university, everybody is naturally interested in the topic. But sometimes the topic is too extreme, too unique. And sometimes it's very niche markets. And this is why when he was talking about this idea that you should have a natural method, and now he wasn't talking about social media, but we can now place it into a social media context. And this idea of connecting with people via social media, even down to e-pal conversations, discovering other cultures, stretching out across the world, and this becomes a very powerful form of learning. And finally, the democratic method, and it talks about actually learning about fairness and celebrating diversity, choice, friendships and relationships, and also engaging with communities. Now, this is a really interesting concept because there are lots of opportunities in social media, such as voting tools, like buttons, etc., where people can actually, I can still hear it and I don't know where it's coming from, and it is annoying me like anything. I'm not too sure whether or not you can hear it as well, but I really don't know where it's coming from. Never mind. It's probably a warning telling me to do something that I should be doing, and it's going, stop it. Anyway, this idea of like buttons. Now, I do know that there's been quite a big thing about like buttons and, Instagram and things like that. And I think this is a really interesting point. And, you know, there are bad things. And you might sort of like say, well, hang on a minute, Ian, it's not actually democratic. It's who can sit there, who's got the most time to like numerous times, etc., etc. And yeah, I understand that. But remember, this was done back in 1966, and we're trying to relate it to present day. So what has all this got to do with technology? And so if we see informal learning or learning via social media as a new learning tool, how does it apply? So are we actually looking at old theories, old points, which have been reapplied to technology, etc.? Are we sort of like saying this is what it was? Sorry, I am still baffled about where these sounds are coming from. I can hear them in my ears, and I'm not too sure whether or not you can as well. But it's annoying me. It is annoying me. So I'll pass. I just need to forget about it. I just need to forget about it and continue. So is this something that we should be reapplying? Is it something that we should be able to understand, and we should say these are relevant now, and we should be looking more at social media? Were they actually created for social media without knowing about it? Okay, so is these way of learning that people are talking about back in the 1997 and 1966 talking about something that was almost like preempting this idea of social media? Or is it the fact that it just happens to be connected? And is informal learning just secondary to formal learning? You know, is the stuff that you learn on the internet or via social media actually not as good as the things that you learn in academia or institutions or schools? So is one actually more or less important than the other one? And finally, sort of like bringing all these learning theories together, does this need to be seen as an integrated approach? Does it need to sort of like take on the old learning theories that I've spoken about and the new learning theories and making it together and joining it all up? Or are we just engaging with these older learning theories because we know that they have credence, we know that people believe in them and support them, and so what we're actually saying is, well, really there should be a new way of learning to do with technology and digital learning, but in order for it to be accepted, we are going to go back to the old-fashioned learning theories and say, look, it copies that, so hopefully some people are going to say, yeah, okay then, I believe in them. So that's the end of that, the normal beginning that allows you to critically engage with learning theory. So do stop the video here, have a quick pause. I'm going to have a quick drink and have a think about it. I'm going to put the floating rocks on for a while. Okay, I'll be back soon. And I am back. Let me come on to here I am. So welcome back. I hope you've had a thought about that and had a think. We're going to move on to the second part of the lecture now, and we're going to talk about deschooling education. And basically what this is saying is, you know, have schools had their day? Is it time to actually remove these buildings, remove these almost like bastions or custodians of education and learning, and remove them with put something else in their place? Sorry, just a cough there. So technology is often seen as a driving force for change, and a lot of the time as new things come along, we have the ability to change existing practice. And this setup that I've got now at the moment is a prime example of that. You know, when I was at school, you couldn't actually sit at home or record with this so much clarity. And you know, I've got a program here, I've got 3 monitors, I've got a light, my microphone is hovering up here, I've got a HD camera. You know, things weren't like this before, you know, and I don't go back to chalkboards or and slates and things like that, but things have changed rapidly since I was in school. And as technology continues to improve, is this the way forward? And I must admit, I love doing these videos and in broadcast live. I must say the thing that I'm missing at the moment is the interaction, you know, of you sort of like putting up your hands and saying, hang on a minute, Ian, what about this? Or what about this? And, you know, there are chat rooms available or even like buttons, but I do, that's what I'm majorly missing at the moment. And, you know, questions, are you understanding me, etc. I suppose if you're not understanding me, you just pause, move back and look at it again. And the other thing that I must say, which should be so helpful for you, is that to pause me and carry on writing your notes, then start me up again, which is always interesting. Okay then, so the other thing that we need to accept is that does sort of like the implementation of new technology, it does not always lead to improvement. The two aren't correlated positively together. So just because you start to use more technology, it doesn't automatically lead to an improvement in learning or the education system. There could be a correlation between those, but it's not always the case. You know, I often say to you, if you have a bad practitioner, if you give them technology, you won't find that you've got a good practitioner. You'll probably find that you've got a bad practitioner who uses technology, and that's a negative to that. Okay then, so let's have a look. So we are in a changing world. You know, we're in a world that things are constantly changing, and you only need to look at round about you at how quickly things are changing. You know, people now shop online, people vote online, people stream music online, they stream videos like this online. You've got the military using drones and combat simulations. You know, there was once a time when we felt that all this would never happen. It was almost like science fiction. But technology is moving very, very quickly. I wonder whether or not, when will come the point that we actually do not carry money around with us anymore. You know, things are slowly changing. I notice on buses now, you can pay via contactless. You can use your card on car parks. And, you know, when I was younger and growing up, if you didn't have a telephone in your house, you had to go to the telephone box and push 2p pieces in. I don't think you can get anything for 2p nowadays, but the world is changing. And I wonder whether or not we need to sort of like think, okay then, the world is changing, but one of the things that is not changing is education. And learning. And if you look at it, has learning actually changed at all? And more to do with, has the institution, which is education, has that changed at all? So what we're going to look at today is that we're going to look, and we've looked at learning and we've been critically analysing new learning theories and old learning theories with the lens of technology. And what we're going to do now is that we're going to look at the institution that is education itself and switch our viewpoint rather from learning, looking at education. I'm just laughing to myself because you can't see my camera at the moment, but I'm doing all the hand actions to sort of like generate that. So, and Selwyn, the education technology book, said, quote, he says, is there anything more old school than school itself? Okay, so basically he's actually saying, you know, come off it. We talk about education, we talk about school, but that idea of a school building hasn't changed for decades, for absolutely decades. You know, still starts at this time of the day, you still go to the building, you still sit in chairs in front of tables or desks, and you know, that actual institution remains the same. Yes, there's new things in there, we're teaching new things, but the actual system hasn't changed for quite a while. And Selwyn quotes Lawty back in 2002. Education does not change at a rapid pace. Let me just make it bigger for you so you can see it. Education does not change at a rapid pace. The major structures in public education are much the same today as about 30 years ago. And that worries, well, it doesn't worry me, it concerns me. You know, are we actually changing quick enough? Now, just to make sure that we're on the same page about here's some definitions. So first things first, schools. Now, schools are institutions where children and young people receive education, usually learning under the guidance of a teacher. So that's what a school is. Schooling refers to the processes of teaching and or being taught in those aforementioned buildings. Oh, excuse me. So there's a difference between schooling and school. The schools are the actual sort of like building, and schooling refers to the actual process. So keep those in mind as we talk. So let's have a look, let's have a look at schools. How have schools changed? Are they changing, or what might they change into? So first things first, you know, schools and technology, you know, children normally spend up to about 6 hours per day, about 190 days per year in school. They're actually in school learning, in inverted commas. So does technology fit into this, both the buildings, the institution, the schools, and the schooling? Okay, or does both of them need to change? You know, we talked a lot about learning, but does schooling need to change, the actual process? Does this idea of a school building need to change? Has it had its time and things are going to change? So first things first, you're going to stop this video again, and I would like you to talk about this question. Is digital technology an integral part of schools today? Okay, so jot down some ideas, and I've given you some pointers to sort of like go off in certain directions, but by all means discuss whatever you wish. So number one, what is your experience of technology in schools? Remember, that's the building or schooling. And where do you think more technology could have been used? So using your own information, your own experience, do you think digital technology is in schools or not? Okay, stop the video now and have a think about it and have a pause. So I must say, this is where I really miss the live sort of like discussion, and I just sort of like feel that I can't engage with you, and I don't think I mean, I hope some people are watching this live. Let me have a look at the figures. Peak concurrent views 3. Oh my giddy aunt, there's 3 people watching. Well, hello you 3 people. I hope you have something to do with the course. Yeah, so yeah, and I miss this interaction, and I think this is something that I think I personally have to work a lot on, actually engaging in the discussion and interacting. I know when I'm streaming live on Twitch and sort of like working, playing games, etc., I really love that interaction, and it's really hard at times when there's nobody watching, but you're still trying to talk to yourself or talking to the camera like I am at the moment. So you probably came up with some really good points, which is fantastic, but hopefully I would have normally seen these in chat rooms, etc., if this was organized correctly. But anyway, let's go on and see what we can go on to from here. So whereabouts are we actually at the moment? Okay, where is schooling technology actually? So Obama was quoted in 2014 in the Los Angeles Times by saying, in a country where we expect free Wi-Fi with our coffee, we should definitely demand it in our schools. And this is, you know, this was a very powerful statement for me, because I often think schools and institutions are not necessarily run by technologists. They often have a technology department, but they don't have the say, they don't have the power to move and change and alter things. And sometimes I think the same. I've worked in schools, and there are some fantastic schools out there which the practitioners are so keen to learn and to engage with new things. But you know, like I've said to you before, and I really must find out who actually quoted this. I think it's in the Douglas Thomas book about a new way of learning. There's 3 types of people when it comes to change. Those people who hide away from it and hope it will go away. Those people who actually complain about it. And those people, which I class myself as a third person, actually see it as a wonderful way for innovation to actually change things and to actually move forward. And I think this is really interesting, that unless you've got people who are willing to actually engage with the technology and not to blindly take it on board and use it, but to critically reflect and evaluate it and say, this is good in this instance, this is good in this instance, then that will never happen. And it's a bit like me talking to you now. I've already started to evaluate this method, saying, you know, the interaction's not too good, I need to work on the interaction, I need to do this, that and the other. There might have been technical problems with the PowerPoint, etc. earlier on, and I think this is important. And sometimes I do really think that schools and institutions, these buildings that are the center of, I'm getting passionate, aren't I? Sorry, calm down, Ian, calm down. I call myself Inwills there, which is my gaming tag. But sometimes I just think the world is moving a lot quicker outside schools. And all of a sudden, our learners are going to go into environments that they have no idea about, because schools are so far behind. And we have a podcast, you know, the education debate. You can find it on Spotify. And we talked about technology last month on it. And I think it's really interesting, you know, this idea of, you know, is technology really... Are schools embracing technology in this new form of learning enough? Now, And I have to say the other point of view, because I bet there's some people shouting at the video screen at the moment. Some people might be saying at this point, but hang on, this is a fad. Not, a fad. It's going to go. I got confused there between fad and tad, but fad, yeah. This is going to go. It's not always going to be here. And I think, okay, interactive whiteboards might not always be here. You know, we're moving on. We have interactive TVs now. But technology is not going to go away. It's here to stay. And I think it's more a case of embracing it and moving forward. Now, I know I get very passionate about this, so, I'm going to try to put it in perspective as we go through. This is something else that I should really evaluate. You should have somebody else now talking about the other side of things. Okay, let's look at UK schools. Okay, so digital technology is said to be a core element of nearly every educational institution, regardless of history and tradition. You know, even Eton, that the independent school, 580-year-old school, has technology in. We have devices such as tablets, laptops, smartphones. There's a lot of pedagogical work now done virtually, and I'm attending a webinar later today, and I think that's really, really good, really important. And there's also a lot of that's my phone going off. Just ignore. There's a lot of flipped approaches going on as well. I'm cross now. Shut up, phone. I'm just going to leave it. Oh. 1 second. I'm back. It was a classic thing. Once I got there, it stopped, and that's something. See, isn't it funny? I can turn my phone. It's not my mobile phone that was going. It's my house phone. Typical technology for you. Okay, then let's continue. So in the current everyday working in school, we have, I really like the design of that. It's a lovely curve. UK schools use technology for a lot of things. They use it for day-to-day management. They use it for administration. You know, we have emails. We produce documents and newsletters via Word and Publisher and things like that. We even send newsletters now via email systems, etc., etc. There's a lot of textbooks and ebooks available, although at times it's really difficult, and there's a lot of cost involved in ebooks because companies still want to make the profit. A lot of examinations now are done online, or they're marked by optical mark readers and things like that. So things are changing, and there's a lot of technology in schools. There's been a huge amount of government initiatives to try to put more technology in school. And these, you know, in the 1980s, there was a promise of a computer in every school. You know, and they were actually saying in every school there will be a computer. Then that was superseded by a computer in every classroom. And I remember seeing the classrooms the computer was in a cupboard, and you open the cupboard, or on a on a trolley that was covered by a cloth at the end of the day. There was this idea of a laptop for every teacher. Now, I remember the actual incentive when it was a laptop for teachers, and teachers got their own laptops. And then we had this idea of, in the 2000s, when this idea that there should be Chromebooks on the desks and laptops and iPads and it's not only every teacher should have the digital, every student should have the digital. But you have to remember, the accompanying thing about this is that the infrastructure, the Wi-Fi, the electricity, the networking also has to grow as well. And that's a huge expense for schools. Now we have things like bring your own device. So, when you come to lectures, you bring your own device to work on. And I'm not saying for any moment in time that we should not allow children or learners to use notepads and papers. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it should be an alternative. Or perhaps something that is used in conjunction. And then even now, BYOT talks about this idea of bringing your own technology to school, to learning. Not bringing your own laptop, bring how you want to learn, how you want to record your own videos, etc., etc. And this is a huge change in schools. But the big question is, how's this going to work, and what's coming up next? And there are people saying you won't be bringing your own device to learn to schools. You will be bringing your own devices. And there's a huge amount of debate now with things like FOMO and saying, fear of missing out. Devices interrupt learning. We should not have our phones out. We should not have our laptops out. We should do this, this, and this. And children should be seen and not heard. Well, maybe not as far as that. But, there is this sort of like train of thought all the time. Bring your own connectivity. Is it going to be a case that everybody will have individual data plans assigned to it, just like your phone? And the schools themselves are not providing this connectivity. Is it a case that it's going to be two people for every one computer? Two computers for every one person, or even 3 digital devices for every one person? I mean, I wrote a chapter in a book about, what I cannot leave home without. And, I suddenly started to realize how much technology I carry around with me. I have my MacBook Pro, other laptops are available. I have my iPhones, other mobile phones are available. I have my iPad and my AirPod Pros. Yeah, I got some. Fantastic, yeah. I've got my iPad. There's so much technology. I have my Apple Watch. So much technology that we actually carry around with us. And are schools keeping up with this, or are they trying to ban them and say don't do them because of the distraction or something? Or is it a case that we've got to think, okay then, how do we actually learn? How does learning have to change so it's in smaller, quick bites? And in that case, if they're in smaller, sort of like 20-minute segments, children and adults can concentrate for that amount and they're not distracted. It often amazes me how long we actually talk for in sessions. And I've spoken to you learners and about this before. If you look at any educational theorist, it will say that there is about 20 minutes is the biggest amount of time, the longest amount of time for people to actually concentrate on. So why do we have 3-hour sessions or 2-hour sessions? Do you see? And that's what I think is interesting about. So is it all positive? And that's what I'm sort of like started to sort of like broach and started to talk about. Are we being critical about how technology is being used? Are we evaluating it? Is there sort of like a very narrow use of technology? Are people just using it for certain things in schools and not developing it? All incentives have results in a very little noticeable change. So all these stuff like have your own computer, do this. There's not been a huge change about them. It's not that all of a sudden we have jumped up in tables of attainment or anything like that. That can't be matched. There's no correlation there. And we're often awash with devices, but schools are often less high tech, sorry, and probably the most important thing, less innovative. They don't actually change what they do. They're trying to do. Selwyn has a wonderful quote, and he says, and I've actually got this stuck up on my wall, and I read it every time I leave to go and teach. He says, technology is not about doing things differently. He says it's about doing different things. And I try to keep that in my head all the time. It's not about doing things differently. It's about doing different things. And it's not trying to use technology in such a way that we sort of like think, okay, then how are we going to, let's try to do what we normally do differently. He's not saying that. He's saying that we should try to look at doing different things. And this might actually mean a change in schooling and a change in the school. So Andreas, I can't pronounce this, who's in the education director of the Organizations for Economic Cooperation and Development, stated in 2015, there have always been a lot of false hopes related to technology. People think that we can just add technology to what we do in school and it's going to transform learning. It's not. And nobody is ever saying that. It's not, we can't just sort of like stick it in there and hope that it will work, because that's not what technology is about. Technology is a tool. It's not a silver bullet. It's not a schooling system. What it is a tool, just like books, just like a pen. And what we need to do is have a look at education itself, schooling itself, and think about whether or not it's preparing our learners for the future, and whether or not technology has a bigger part to play in it. So Whitby in 2013 says the current model of schooling had been tweaked long enough. It's time for a new model, and I fear that if we don't move on this, schooling will become increasingly irrelevant in the lives of young people and the society it serves. And I think this is a very powerful message. This is a very, very powerful message, because for me, what we're basically saying here is that we're saying, no, I'm not saying everything has to be techie. What we're saying is that the model for schooling has been tweaked and changed, but now we can't do it anymore. It's a bit like having a pair of socks, or your favorite shoes, or your favorite slippers. You can tweak it and tweak it and tweak it, but there comes a time that you need new socks. And that's what people are saying now. That's what technologists are saying. Because if schooling, the actual, what we learn, how we learn it, where we learn it, if that does not change, then it's going to become completely irrelevant for our learners. You know, are we teaching children today and preparing them for the future? Are we actually doing that? And is the schooling system allowing us to do that? So, how could you change schools and schooling? So I've waffled on for ages about, you know, it needs to change, it needs to do this, it needs to do that. But what do we actually do, therefore? What can actually change? And I think that is something that we have to talk about now, because I don't believe in not giving some answers. Okay then, so possible changes. First things first, we need to rethink traditional spaces, places and contexts of institutional learning. are we still in the age when we pile all the learners into one place? Is this something that we can actually do? Okay, or do we have to rethink a lot of the way we do things? In some universities, there's now sort of like you can change the rooms around. You can sort of like push. And I was even in a session once that they wanted to get bean bags for learners. But to me, that is just doing things differently. It's not about doing different things. For me, excuse me, I want to work at a school which everything's mobile, that everything has video equipment that I can record without going somewhere special. It's actually there in the room, that lectures or school lessons are recorded instantly, that there's this use of big data and everything is feeding in, and we're looking at individual children, the holistic child, but personalized learning rather than a class. And we go on to say that these places, we have to talk about connected learning now. We have to start saying these are not two separate spheres of knowledge or silos. They are actually connected. And a lot of people I know at this point will be saying, well, it didn't harm me. I didn't have any difference. It worked fine for me. And that's brilliant. I think that is perfect. That is excellent. But we're not them. And could it have been better? That's my point. It's not, we were growing up in a different world then. And even you watching this video might be saying, oh no, that's fine, I can do that. But what I'm saying is, could it have been better? And could you have been more prepared? And that's the key factor for me. We want to see this connection over disciplines, see how things join together. Have not just me, who's very passionate about digital learning and technology, talking, having that alternative viewpoint, not having a debate. Well, we can have a debate, not having an argument, but having that discussion. Now, on the PowerPoint, and I'm not going to spend time reading it to you, I linked a web page from 2014. So do go and have a look at it and see what Newt Gingrich is talking about there. So I promise you we're getting there. We're getting there. So what could be the changes? What could be the changes? So first of all, changes in the curriculum and assessment. So this idea of what we're actually teaching, what children are learning, can we actually change that? Are we preparing children for the future, or are we not? And this is really important. What about assessment? What about peer assessment? What about online assessment? What about, and you might be saying, well, we have those at the moment, but what we have is pockets. We don't have it embedded and there all the time. We have pockets, and education moves, as we know, very slowly. Changes to buildings, learning zones, learning happening wherever. These little pockets of learning, nothing being fixed, not saying you have to learn from 9 o'clock till 3 o'clock and then that's it. So when is that learning time? When and what can you actually learn? And almost like bringing back the passion for learning. And I know, some people will say, yeah, but some people have no passion for learning and you're going to have to make them. Okay, I accept that. But what about those people who are really passionate? Are we enforcing one set of schooling systems onto everybody while we could have different ones? And some schools, on a positive, are making some changes and are changing. They're not doing things differently, they're doing different things. So let's have a look at some of them. So this is an example of that. These are the Quest to Learn schools in New York City. And what they do is that the whole idea of it is that they are on a quest to learn something, and they assume identities, they pretend to be things, they gather points rather than grades, so almost like gamification and using a game-based design. Rather than having a curriculum, they have missions that they go off and try to solve. They don't have year groups, they have levels. So that as they gain more experience, they go up levels. And this is basically game-based learning that we'll talk about next week. And they've actually put it into schools. And this idea that children are more motivated, they're more keen to learn, and they see the point of learning. And I think that final point is my important one. They see a point, they see whereabout it is going. There are other schools doing this, and you can see over there, I've linked to a video link which are from the Steve Jobs schools in the Netherlands. And these talk about an education for a new era, and there's a video, so pause me and go off and have a look at that video, and then come back once you've watched it. No, I said pause me and go and watch the video. Off you go. Off you pop. I can still see you watching this. Off you go. Go and watch it. Now, obviously, if you're watching this live, you can't do that. But do come back and pause, come back to see the recording there. So things are changing. Things are changing. And there are some alternatives to schools as well. And there's this idea of free world U, and this is developing an alternative learning community. People are homeschooled, young people are connecting via the internet with experts like myself. I don't do it, but I would love to be involved and actually engaging with the students, engaging with their discussions. And they offer these accelerated learning resources to be shared between communities and parents and learners. And I love the idea of this. I think so much of learning is behind closed doors, and they're behind university doors or school doors or library doors. And basically they're saying, no, you can't get in here. This is our learning. And this idea of a more free engagement. And it's interesting that this video will be live on YouTube. And, I don't mind people engaging with it. I want to hear it. It goes back to those ideas of blogging and things like that. I want people to engage it. I want people to tell me when I'm wrong or they don't agree, because that actually supports my learning as well as their own. We talked about alt schools beforehand as well, so go back and look at that video. Right, conclusion. You can see it says conclusion, so we're coming to the end. So let's just wipe away to that, and then let me bring in closing remarks. So we're to a stage that, are we stuck with the schooling system like we are? School systems around the world are still being based on this idea of a cookie cutter model. This idea that one size fits all. There is one best way to do it. And anything that goes out of that cookie cutter model is seen as not necessarily innovative, but are seen as something to criticize and to sort of like push away and think, oh, this isn't real learning, etc., etc., rather than looking at the advantages. Will things change? We'll probably say for a few years, still to come. Change in education is incredibly short. I'm a live streamer I love streaming on YouTube. I love streaming on Twitch. And most people would see it more as a pastime, as a leisure pursuit. But I would love to have my own education channel when we sit and have discussions live via the video. I would like to produce a conference talk when I'm actually zoomed in. I'm doing a webinar later on this year, which will be really exciting, but I want to attend virtual conferences. I want to be able to watch things on YouTube. I want to have a class of my own. I want years ago, absolute years ago, I set up, and I've still got it, I set up a Facebook page called The Virtual Teacher. And I just thought, what a wonderful idea to have a resource there where parents and children alike can tap into, find new ideas, find new ways of learning. And it's almost like having online courses that you come along and you look at something and you engage with it at your own time. And then I'm saying to people, you don't have to go off and pay this amount. You don't have to pay this amount. I want learning to be free. And I know it can't be free because I need a wage. But at the same time, can we make more of it free? Can I put content like this out onto the internet so anybody can engage with it? And that's what's important to me. That's what I feel really passionate about. Some people conclude that the system is not broken. Okay, they don't think it's broken like us technologists think or say. They think it's absolutely fine, and that goes back to this argument, it has worked absolutely fine up until now, so why change it? And this is the hardest thing about education. Cough cough. That is actually going to take years to see the impact. So what we're doing now in schools and education, we will not see the effect of that until the current 5-year-olds are in the adult world. That's a huge amount of time. It's a huge amount of time. And if we don't, my feeling is that if we don't change things now, you know what's going to happen. And it appears, you know, that things are moving too slowly and too, well, not too slowly. Well, are they moving at all? Finally, current schools and schooling do play a significant role in the improvement of life chances of young people. And that itself is why I think it should change. That's why I think that alone is that why we have to look at it. And I know there'll be some, I'm just going to flick onto the final, onto the final slide here. I'm having computer issues, don't worry, I will be able to sort it because I'm a technologist. So this is my final point, So this goes back to Selwyn in 2017, and he states, some degree of change is needed for schools to make the most of digital learning and technology. And to me, I think that is true. And it's this idea of to make the most of it. And the biggest question is, do schools want to do that? Do practitioners want to do that? Does the government want to do that? And believe me, I will have no smile on my face at all when we get to the future and some people are saying we should have changed ages ago. I'm not that person who's going to be turning around and saying, I told you so. Because I might be wrong. We all might be wrong. But I do think technology is moving and we need to make the most of it. Just to finish off, I'll just put my references up there for you. So I'll just swipe across to this screen so you can sort of like have a look at those or stop and see it. So I've got something in my eye, I'm scratching it at the moment. So yeah, that's the end of today's session. Obviously it's not the full 2 hours long because I've had pauses when I've sent you off to do things. I do seriously consider at times, you know, whether or not we are moving fast enough, we are going quick enough, we are actually preparing learners for the future. And I think the only thing I can do to sort of like maintain my saneness is to do what I can when I can do it. And hence a lot of my money is invested in my own equipment, invested in providing lessons like this, doing this and taking the time to do it so that you can enjoy it and see the benefits, to evaluate, and the negatives, to evaluate it, because you are the future educationalists, not me. My time is coming to an end. I'm not dying or anything. Well, I am dying because everybody, but you know what I mean. You know, now I have to share everything with you. Now, I hope you've enjoyed that, and I hope you've enjoyed a different way of learning. And please feel free to, oh look, a typical YouTube bit, like, comment and subscribe to the channel. You can do that just by pressing the bell button. You'll get a notification when I go live again. I really do hope you've enjoyed it. Please do evaluate this way of learning, and have a wonderful rest of the week. And I will see you next Monday, 9 o'clock, nice and early, for game-based learning. Until then, please remember to be who you are and say what you think, because the people who mind don't matter, and the people who matter don't mind. Have fun, and I'll catch you all later. And until then, happy learning. See you all later. Bye. Bye.